So tēnā koutou katoa, it's really great to be here. Assessment, I'm a bit of a nerd really because assessment is one of my passions. Curriculum is the other one. So they go together quite nicely. Curriculum, pedagogy and assessment, that's been my main interest all of my life really. So I want to start by giving you a bit of a quiz actually. Who's in the room? I'll get a sense of who's in the room and then I'm going to give you a little test. Because you know you want to, don't you? Yeah, you're leaning towards me, I can feel it. So who's primary? What primary people have we got here? I just need a, woo, secondary? Yay, that's actually not a bad mix. A little bit outnumbered there, but it's still a pretty good mix. Professional development providers or facilitators? Yep, university, academics. Cool. Anyone from Aero here today? We did yesterday actually, that was one of our, it was a fantastic seminar from Aero yesterday and we need to connect you with the publications that are just coming out because they're really insightful. Any policymakers, anyone from the ministry here today? Yep, don't be afraid, come on, it's all right. We're all respectful here. That's great. So we have, now is there somebody that I haven't mentioned and they're like, what about me? No, that's who we've got in the room. That's great. So have a look at these two statements. Each one comes from a different document. So I want you to think, which document do you think each statement comes from? So A, the New Zealand curriculum. B, tomorrow's standards report. It was subtitled Assessment for Better Learning back in 1990. Directions for Assessment in New Zealand, otherwise known as the DANS paper. How many people have heard of that? A few. It's worth a read if you haven't heard of it. And the National Education Monitoring Project. So just talk to the person beside you or behind you. Put a stake in the ground. Where do you think? Remember, each one is in a different document. Away you go. I'll give you 1 minute. Bit of a risk letting a group go, but oh, you're very good. So I just asked a couple of people, what do you think? And they said, we're wondering about the purpose behind your question, which is what assessment people would do, wouldn't they? Why is she assessing us on this? And what's the likely answer going to be? And they actually had it. So that first statement, how many people think it was A? Go on, be brave. Put a stake in the ground. Okay, we've got about 5 or 6. How many people think it was B? C? D? Because it could have been any of them. Like really, that's the point I'm going to be making. But okay, so I'll come to the answer in a minute. The second one then, how many think A? More people think A. B? Nobody? C? Yep, probably was. Actually, that statement may have been in more than one document. And D? Ah, all right. So the point I am making, you can see the point now, can't you? We have had an amazingly stable approach to assessment in New Zealand, 28 years in official documents. The purpose of assessment, the primary purpose, is to improve teaching and learning, underpinned by an assessment for learning approach. 28 years, like that is incredible. It's fair to say, of course, there have been some blips along the way, but the blips have been about the best ways and means. So despite governments changing, despite different educational reforms, we have had that really stable approach. And I think that's something that we can be really proud of. I think in some ways, it's probably why we're sort of the envy of the world. when we go to international forums, you know, up on my Facebook came 4 years ago today, you were in Canada, along with Michael and Jenny Poskett, and a couple of others from New Zealand. And in Canada, they were so envious. The people from England were actually crying about their system and saying, how come you have got this amazing system? Yes, you might have blips along the way, but you have had this amazingly stable system for all of those years. Often we forget that. You know, we're worrying about some aspect or which is great because that's how we learn, but we actually forget the really great system that we have and the great people and things in it. Assessment, it's part of our DNA, actually. So that 1990 Tomorrow Standards report, it wasn't about national standards, they'd never been dreamed of then. It was about getting rid of school certificate. People have been thinking about that for a long time, but it actually then became a policy that drove through, and embedding our qualification system, embedding a new qualification system based on standards, a standards-based approach to qualification. So that was a massive shift, and that is when our official process around assessment for better learning started, because that was the subtitle of that report. I mean, our national monitoring program, it's had a name change. People are amazed. We do not have a national testing regime, we have a sampling regime across the whole curriculum. And students are sampled doing small group work as well as individual tasks. Like, that is an incredible thing, and we still have that. We have had that since, whatever it says up there, 1995. That's a long time. That's kind of like an icon and a stable thing. As we go into the next layer of reforms, let's not forget these things. Let's not let them go. Let's take them to the next level. Who remembers that Assessment for Success in Primary Schools book? We did have a bit of a blip then, actually. What was proposed? Anyone remember? No? Tell the person next to you. Guess, what did it propose? It was a blip. It was a blip, didn't happen, but it was proposed and it was about to happen. National testing, yes. National testing. So that was proposed in 1998. The government changed. This is then the new government said no national testing. I came in 1999, got the assessment manager's job in the ministry, and there was quite a lot of money appropriated to implement this document in 1998, and we wanted to keep the money in the system. So we proposed, I sat down with John Hattie, and we proposed that we develop a tool that could never be used for national testing, and that tool was ASTIL. So ASTIL came about out of that document, then a government change, then how can we actually have a tool that gives good information that's based on a formative underpinning? And so that's how ASTIL came in. So how does all this stuff happen? You know, it's the work of people. It's people who write research and publish research. It's people who design policy. It's people who facilitate professional development in schools. It's leaders and teachers who try things and who join groups and who influence what happens. It's people who design qualification system and standards in secondary schools. You know, it's people who design national monitoring design for the whole country. So all of those people, these things aren't handed down from somewhere. People make it, people working together, people thinking together. So what I think we've got now in our system is a time for thinking. Over the last 2 days, people have said, but what do we do, what do we do? And my answer is think together, because we've got a really good opportunity to take this system to the next level. Don't react. Don't say, yes, we're going to assess the whole curriculum and we're going to develop 1,000 tiny things and we're going to run around with clipboards and tick them all off. Don't do that. Let's think and problem solve together, so that we do something that's really worth pursuing, that's really good quality, that builds on the foundations that we've already got in place.
Next door to the beginners are the children who've been at school 6 or 8 months.
Watching? Good for you.
Under Miss Hamlin's care, they're already doing real stories.
Right. Mary.
See my new puppet. I must be good to it.
Good girl, Mary. That was lovely. Would you like a stamp, dear?
Play.
Good, there we are. Wonder what that one is.
I meant to introduce that, but it was sort of must be on click play. You're like, why am I showing you this? How many people experienced that kind of feedback when they were at school? Come on, 60s babies. I know it was you. And I know the other ones among you who weren't born. That's fine. You need to know this. This is where we've come from. You know, we've come a long way. So last week, one of my talented friends sent me an email. And she said, I just want you to know that I've been down to three-way interviews. And she's a great little artist. Actually, we need to get her to do some work for us, I think. This is just, you know, because this is what she does. And so I'm not sure if you can read it, but there they are, the teacher and the little boy and his mum. And the teacher says, is there anything you want to ask about? He's 5. He says, every day we do phonics and we only sometimes get to read in the reading corner. And I would like it if we only did phonics some days and the reading corner every day. Now, there's a 5-year-old giving his teacher feedback. Zoom back to that shot of the 60s and when I was at school, sorry, video, never happen, would it? Like I would never have had the confidence to say anything about my own learning, let alone give the teacher some feedback that I thought might have some chance of being operated on. Now that might not have been, you know, the case for everybody, but I think it was probably more the case for most people then than not, whereas this is more the case now. So you can just see that massive shift. So what is the official position on assessment now? Where would you go to find it? Does anyone know that there is a ministry position paper on assessment on TKI? Few people do. Do you know what's in it? Do you know the shift? I'm not going to give you a test on it. You can look that up later. But it was written in 2011 and it came out of the DANS paper, the Directions for Assessment in New Zealand, which was written by John Hattie, Lester Flockton, Rose Hipkins and Michael Absalom. That paper was then taken by Lisa Rogers, who was in the ministry at the time, and she worked with policy people in the ministry to turn it into a ministry position paper. It's actually a really good paper. What it does is it builds on the New Zealand curriculum by saying, let's take the notion of assessment for learning, the purpose and principles, and apply them to everyone in the system. The basic premise is it's not just teachers and students who have something to learn, right? Everybody in the system has something to learn. I like the science one. Can you read them down the back? So, what about subject knowledge then? Why does assessment for learning matter? Isn't it just you've really got to know your content and then you can bring the students along? And of course you do, we know that. Teachers really do need to know their content knowledge. It matters a lot, but having a framework for how to teach and assess matters just as much. So it's an and both, isn't it? We've all experienced teachers who deeply know their subject knowledge, but they've got no idea or no framework about how to bring other people into that discipline knowledge and share that knowledge with them. So we've got really what assessment for learning offers is a deceptively simple, it can seem deceptively simple, pedagogical framework for teaching and assessing concepts right across the curriculum. You can see it here. I think these are the 3 main frameworks being used in New Zealand. They're just slightly different takes on the same things. So you can see Michael's archway, which is in his book Clarity in the Classroom. You can see John Hattie's 3 key steps, which are in the Visible Learning program that some of you and in the Visible Learning books. And you can see Dylan Williams' framing. Dylan was in New Zealand recently. Anyone here go see him? amazing, isn't he? Just amazing. So when I'm talking about content knowledge, you know, Dylan talked for 5 hours with black and white slides from the front, but with people, and I have to acknowledge my opening gambit with A, B, C or D. That was one of the techniques he used to engage. I thought, that's great, I'll take the idea. So he is amazing, and what he talks about, he went back 25 years and he talked about 15 substantial reviews of assessment for learning research over those 25 years. And he said that they had synthesised thousands and thousands of studies, and together they quantified leaps in student achievements, speeding up of student achievement to the order of 70 to 80% acceleration. Now that's incredible. So why are we talking about assessment for learning? Because it works. You know, the evidence really stacks up. Look at the impact just for effective feedback on its own. Did someone want a picture and they didn't quite get it? Do you want me to go back one? Go on. Okay. You're right. You can get these slides anyway. We're going to put them up, aren't we? Yes. Yes. So don't worry too much. So look at the impact for effective feedback alone. Now, John Hattie talks about a 0.4 effect size being significant in terms of impacting on student learning, accelerating student learning. Look at those results. It's something that is really worth spending time on. But you know what? We do have a puzzle, don't we? We kind of know what our system data looks like. So this is the puzzle. I don't get it. We know all of this. We know this works. But we've got this kind of puzzle. So that's our latest PISA data that's available on various websites. Just put the 3 studies together. That's what it looks like at this point in time. And it doesn't take a lot of analysis to see that actually that's not really the trend we want to be seeing. So we've got improvements in NCEA data. How many students leaving with NCEA level 1? Tell the person next to you. How many do you reckon? In my day, school C, it was 50% was leaving with school C. Today, how many leaving with NCEA level 1? NCEA level 1, who thought 70%? 70 to 80. Who thought 80 to 90? Who thought higher than 90? Yeah, so you're kind of in the ballpark. It's actually 89.4% to be precise. Yeah. So, you know, that is a really good thing, isn't it? We don't want 50% of our young people leaving school thinking they're a failure. We want them to be acknowledged for what they know and can do. So we've got more students staying at school longer, we've got more students engaged in learning, we've got almost all students coming out with some recognition of what they know and can do, but we've got this. And this measures different things, of course it does. But we've got to keep our eye on that ball as well. Andreas Schleicher, he's head of OECD, everything to do with assessment in OECD, and he was here recently and he said, how come your excellent practice in this country isn't sticky enough to impact across the system? It's a really good question, isn't it? Because you're taking an appreciative approach, you're not doing data and deficits and we're all doomed. You're going, how come that excellent practice isn't sticky enough? What is it that is actually going to take us to the next level? So, you know, that really got me wondering. I think it's really a question worth pondering on and worth pondering on together. So I'm kind of wondering, Dylan Williams said, are we moving to the next best thing before we've achieved the current best thing really well? You know, can we ever really say we have done assessment for learning? People go, yep, we did that back in 1999 when that book came out. We did assessment for learning and now we're on to something else. Can we ever really say that? I know, people are shaking their heads. And I'm wondering, you know, we've got a devolved education system. locally managed, people in charge of their own schools. But I've heard it a little bit lately too. Well, let's wait for the ministry to tell us what to do. Wait a minute, we're devolved, locally managed, we've got agency. Come on, we're talking about agency for students. Let's wait, but hang on, we'll also reserve the right to resist if we don't like it. You know, this isn't the time for doing that. There's a lot of reviews going on, there's a lot of opportunity for voice, and this is one of the opportunities. And, you know, when I look around here and all the hands up across the different sectors, I think that together, the people in this room know. Like, if we can put these minds together and the minds across the country, we will have some answers and we will have something to offer that can take this system to the next level. Now, there are times in our history when, in many ways, you would have been talking into the wind trying to do that. This is not that time. So we have to do something, and now is the time, I think. You've got to make the best opportunities in the context that you're in and in the time that you're in. Make the best of those opportunities, because they don't come around that often. I think the last time this opportunity came was actually 89-90, on the kind of scale that we're talking now. So we need to step up for it, and I think that we absolutely can. So just, I'll give you a couple of minutes, because I think this is, what do you make of it? That's kind of, I've just got a few things that I put out there. How did you react to that? What are your thoughts about it? Maybe nail one of those 3 people that Jenny challenged you. I'll give you about 5 minutes. Wait a minute. Yes, 10 o'clock I finished, didn't I? I'll give you 5 minutes. Just find someone you don't know or haven't talked to. 5 minutes to talk about that question. Go. So you'll recognise this diagram from the New Zealand curriculum. Basically, it's saying every layer needs information to do their jobs well. They need assessment information. Now, at the moment, the ministry is saying, no, don't send us, it's fine. But actually, the ministry does need information to do their jobs well. Why don't we say, well, what is the information? Work with the ministry. So we're not saying, you know, it's not either the ministry, we're waiting for them to tell us what to do, or on the other hand, we're saying, no, we're going to bombard you and tell you. It's together, across the system, we're putting our thinking together. What is the information that each layer needs to do their jobs really, really well? Because to solve the kind of gnarly problems that we haven't been able to solve in the past, we need to work together. We need relational trust. And I actually think that is a thing right now that we need to work on across the system. It can be within your organisation, it could be within your school, could be within your kahuiako, could be between leaders, various leader groups and ministry, anywhere. If we can't get that relational trust to work on solving these problems together, we're not going to get a system as strong as we otherwise might. You know, the relationships and the trust between the people in the system, to me, will directly impact on the quality of the outcomes that system achieves. Just think about it. It kind of makes sense, doesn't it? You know, just in a smaller context, if that's really humming and the relationship of all those people is really humming around your core purpose, solving problems as they come up, really keeping students at the heart, that's working in your school, you are on a cycle where you're constantly growing and learning together. So that, to me, is our challenge across the system. How can we get on a cycle where instead of having these conversations at each other, or waiting for someone to make a decision and then going, no, we're not going to do that, getting together and agreeing and committing together with a purpose at the heart of it. You know, so what do I mean by relational trust? Just think about a relationship where you trust others. Might be professional, might be personal. What is that? What's happening there? It means you really respect the other person. Yeah, first and foremost, and you act with respect, and your words are respectful, and your actions are respectful. And it means that you invest time in standing in their shoes and understanding their interests deeply, not just batting against them. You deeply invest your time in listening to that person, understanding their interests. And you really trust their intent. Like that if they're a bit off one day, You just go, oh, they're a bit off. Actually, their intent, that's that fair but strict teacher. That student trusts that that teacher's intent is about them and advancing them, and they will be up for being challenged. So apply that across the system then. Conversations with others across the system. If those things are present, then we're going to be able to solve problems, I think, this is my hypothesis, that we have not been able to solve before. And if you think about it from a student's point of view, if a student trusts her teachers, then she will willingly give information that then enables the teacher, the parent, her peer, to help advance that learning. And that means they're going to trust that that information's not going to be misused. They're not going to give information to a phys ed teacher and then be made to feel that they're uncoordinated and useless at sport. I'm going to give that information and they're going to help me feel one step more capable and competent. They're not going to misuse it. Schools are going to give information to the ministry and they're going to trust that it's not going to be misused to label them, name them, blame them, scapegoat them, whatever. But of course it goes both ways. I've sat in that ministry for 15 years and sometimes you have problems. You are not going to share those problems to help get them problem solved with a group of leaders if you do not trust them, that you can problem solve together. If you think that they might go and just run to the Dominion Post in the morning and it'll be on the front page what the issue is, and you're going to bring your minister into disrepute, you can't do it. So that trust about the intent, the respect, the problem solving together we really care about the kind of adults we're creating in this place. We all really care about that and we want to work in the best ways possible to advance it. So I think that's kind of our challenge. And so thinking about that, Michael and I started to think about, well, what does that mean? Because you have to have accountability in a system. $11 billion plus goes into education. You can't say schools can just do what they like and nobody cares and it's all fine and they know what they're doing. I mean, you do know what you're doing, but actually there is some accountability in there. So if we were thinking across the system, the left-hand side, we've kind of gone, okay, this is an accountability-focused system and it drives certain behaviours. It drives compliance. It drives tick boxing. It drives, we're only doing this because we have to. We're actually all feeling really tired and we haven't got time to do the important stuff because we have to do this stuff for somebody else. And there's a lot of them and they talk and sighing when you're on that accountability side. So we were thinking, okay, so what if we said a learning-focused system? We all say students are at the heart of our system and no one would argue with that. But what if we actually said learning for all is at the heart of education in this country? Learning for all is what supports our students to grow and learn. Students are at the heart, but learning for all is at the heart. And we want to show that every person on those layers is learning. We want to have a learning-focused system. And that's what we're focused on doing. Can you see a difference? A learning-focused system. So we think that right-hand side works in terms of it could be an individual school or it could be a whole system. And accountability is a byproduct. Anybody who's been involved in appraisal recently, you're not running around gathering buckets of evidence to prove something. You're actually doing your inquiring, your learning, your growing, your thinking. And as a result of that, there's some evidence that actually shows you're accountable for your professional standards. What if we made that the thing that goes right across the system deliberately? So we could see the ministries learning and growing. What information do they need so that you can see them changing their practice related to their role in the system, and so on all the way through. So if we're really, imagine if everyone in the system was really deeply interested in the kind of adults we're creating. They're respecting one another, assuming positive intent in all our discussions, standing in each other's shoes, taking time to really listen and understand each other in more detail than we ever had before, like deliberately doing that. and then gathering insights from each other's places in the system and going back to our own spaces and improving what's happening in those spaces. You know, to me, that is a really big opportunity, and it's something worth working for right now. I'll just give you 1 minute, because that's, I don't know, we think this is good, but it might not be. This is like a few glasses of wine on a Friday night. So, but a lot of thinking. So just react to that for a minute, and then I'm only going to give you a minute because I've got just one last idea before we wrap up and send you to workshop. So just react to that. What does that mean to you? A learning focused system? To what extent is your school a learning focused system versus the other side and accountability? Where are you on that journey? Hey, found something that worked on my last little break. Okay, so one last thought. So we've had a couple of thoughts so far. One is our sustained and deep approach to assessment for learning across 30 years. The second one is, to what extent is our relational trust across our system hindering or helping? Can we do better? Third idea, which couldn't finish talking about assessment without talking about curriculum, you know, it's the what. So we have the opportunity with the NCA review now, and also with the reviews following national standards. We have the opportunity now to think about the what again. And to me, that's a really exciting opportunity to rethink, actually, it's the back end of the curriculum. So if we think about a whole child moving from year 1 through to year 13, what are the things that need to be foregrounded, say every 2 years, because we've got levels at the moment, we may not in the future, but you kind of need something to put some signposts in the ground. What are our signposts? Now, you can't assess every little bit of that curriculum every year for every student. Like, really, really do not even try. So we know the people that have been involved in the design of NCEA, grain size really matters. If you get it too small, the grain size of the things you're looking at, you actually take attention away from the things that really matter. If you get it too big, you can't get any consistency of judgment, and people interpret it really differently, and actually the validity of the thing, the quality of the thing that you're measuring starts to come under pressure. So what we need to do is be thinking about what is the right grain size if we're measuring across the curriculum, what is foregrounded for children at each phase of their learning, what are those things that are most important, because I think they're different as we move through. Now, we have done some work. When I say we, it is myself, Rose Hipkins, who's been working on capabilities, Carolyn English from CORE, some other people from Evaluation Associates, Sue Douglas from Literacy, Jill Thomas from Maths, and representatives from each learning area. So what we worked together to develop some thinking for a communities of learning curriculum tool, right? So how many people in communities of learning here? A few of you. All right, so that thing exists, but it's the thinking I'm talking about now. It's the thinking for one part of the tool, which is called the Coherent Pathways tool. What we have started to do as a group, and I'm not saying this is the answer at all, this is the start for thinking, and it was quite a powerful group, I have to say. Rose is one of the people who's done amazing thinking around where to with competencies and capabilities. It is thinking that I'm saying is worth drawing on. If you want that thinking, you can just email me and I'll send you the Word doc. If you're in a kahoiako, you might want to look at the tool at some stage. But the tool actually isn't the easiest way to get at the thinking, because you have to click through stuff. The easiest way to get it thinking is get our Word doc that we gave to the IT programmers that gives them the instructions for what should go in it. So if you want that, email me and I'm really happy to send it to you. But I'll just give you a little example. I didn't put it on a slide because I was wondering whether I should do this. So think of a student at year 3, right? So think of those first 3 years to me are a foundation, what I would say foundations for learning, if you wanted to give it a name. So here's a short description of what that would look like. So you would be foregrounding oral language, reading, writing and maths, because all of those are critical for learning. You would also be supporting those students to build what NZCR calls a rich library of experiences across all of the learning area disciplines. You would not be assessing all of the learning area disciplines at that stage, but you would be monitoring that they were getting rich experiences as they read, write and do oral languages in each of those disciplines. That's what you would be looking for. You wouldn't be ticking whether they had achieved a level 1 achievement objective or whatever. That's not the important thing at this stage, right? And the other thing you would be looking at is if you were nurturing their curiosity and questioning in those different learning area disciplines. How many students have you got at year 3 who are still too scared to ask a question? In what context will they ask a question? One-on-one, small group, bigger group? You know, that's really critical, isn't it? So wouldn't you be easy to assess, pretty easy to assess, but really a critical thing? They develop patterns, and then the third thing in this sort of summary that I just put together out of the cultural, but it gives you a sense, right, is that they're developing patterns of behaviour, thinking and interactions that strengthen their conceptions of themselves as a social being, as a thinker, as a learner and as a contributor to their community. So by year 3, what is each one of those students doing to contribute to their classroom? Do they notice something and try to make it better for themselves and others? Just some little thing. Might be at home, might be in their school. So the contexts are quite small. Now, if that was all you're assessing, so you're looking at literacy and numeracy progressions down there because that's so important. If you're going to do detailed assessment, that's where you're putting your focus on. And these other big things, 2 or 3. It doesn't feel overwhelming, but it does feel important. Do you see what I mean? Yeah. I have to stop. I've done that for a year. I've done that for years, every 2 years up to year 13. So if you want that summary or the longer paper that sits behind it about why those things, just ask and you can have it. So, you know, in summary, I think we need to be aligning our assessments. If we're talking about 21st century learning, you know, and people call it different things, then we've got to align our assessments to that, and now's the chance. We've got to join up discipline, knowledge, competencies and application in new situations, which that example that I just gave you does that. It says take these things together, pick the most important things and just assess those. What are you doing with these assessments? If you're not doing anything, just stop it. I mean, the Aero one yesterday was actually more about the things you should stop doing. We need to get those messages out. It was really good. It was very challenging in terms of just stop doing all these things that you're not using, that just make people tired, that a student doesn't even know why they're doing them, and it never goes back and touches a student. If you're doing things like that, just stop it. And I think that the Global Leaders Education Partnership that New Zealand's part of, I think their questions are worth considering as well, because they are focused on the vision of new pedagogies, curricular and assessment methods really enabling higher order capabilities. And that is one of the issues we have with 89.4% achieving NCEA level 1 and PISA showing the slope. How can we ensure that everybody has higher order capabilities? That's what that issue is highlighting to me. So just as you go into your workshops, I would just wanted to finish with pulling us back to noticing, recognising and responding the quality that we have in our system now, because that's what the workshops will help you do. How many have heard of an experiment organised by the Washington Post a few years ago? Recognise this? Couple? I'll just tell you anyway, because it's such a great story about recognising quality. So at a railway station in Washington, this man played his violin for 45 minutes, and during that time, 2,000 people walked past. After 4 minutes, one woman threw $1 down without stopping. After 6 minutes, a young man leaned against a wall for a couple of seconds, and then off he went. At 10 minutes, a 3-year-old stopped, but then his mother just pulled him along and made him keep going. And at 45 minutes, only 6 people had stopped, 20 had given money, and he had raised $32. So that violinist was Joshua Bell, one of the most famous violinists in the world. That violin cost $3.5 million. He was playing a Bach piece that was one of the most intricate pieces ever written. And he'd played at a theatre in Boston just 2 nights before, and the seats had sold for an average of $100 each. So my point is, look for quality, make sure you take time to notice and recognise and respond to it. So thank you very much.